Hey guys, this is OJB with the Ventilation Shop, and I wanted to answer the question of what is sheet metal. Okay, and we got some different types of metal here. Sheet metal is basically thin metal, like this. You see, this is metal. It's very thin. That we use, sheet metal workers use to fabricate HVAC systems, chutes, hoppers, safety guards, basically a number of items. Here's an end cap I made as a sample. This is just a regular duck end cap I made. Probably maybe even buy this at Home Depot or something. But this is made out of sheet metal. Okay, so just so you guys get an idea. And we make all sorts of items. Like I said, it's not just ductwork. There's a lot of stuff that is fabricated. And I just wanted to touch on what it is and a couple of the different types of metals that we use and why we use them. Okay, so the most basic is this is black carbon steel. All right, it's got no coating. This is like steel. Okay, and it's 1/4 inch, which is about the heaviest in the sheet metal trade. 1/4 inch is about the heaviest. I mean, I've done a little bit of half it. Like I don't bend 1/2 inch, but sometimes I gotta have like base plates that are 1/2 inch. But generally speaking, 1/4 inch is it's the heaviest I can really bend and shear. Okay, 1/4 inch is the heaviest I can bend and shear here, and that's pretty standard. All right. And I'm going to just go over some advantages and disadvantages of each of these. And like I said, I just want you all to see it. So black is, like I said, it's the most standard. It's the most affordable of all the types of steel. Everything gets a little more expensive above this. The big advantage of this, like why do people use this versus other steel, is it's very easy to weld. Okay, this is very easy to weld, and it's easy to paint, right? Some of the other metals are just not as paint friendly. Okay, you can paint galvanized, but I don't like the look of it. But this is easy to paint. This is very easy to paint, very easy to weld. The big problem with this is it's ugly. Okay, it can be ugly. Some people don't mind it, but it's not as pretty as the other metals. And it rusts very easily. You can see a little rust here. It rusts. That's the issue with black. Okay, so that's black steel, 1/4 inch. Like I said, this is pretty heavy. Usually it's much thinner, but I thought I'd show you a couple pieces. The next is we got a piece of light gauge galvanized. Galvanized means it has a zinc coating put onto it. This is the most common steel used in the sheet metal trade. At least for us. I mean, every shop's different. But when a lot of people think of sheet metal, they think of like house furnaces, commercial buildings, stuff of that nature. That's usually what comes to mind. This is the most common type. Like I said, this is 24, which is not the lightest, but it's definitely not the heaviest. Just a piece I pulled out of a scrap bin. And like I said, here we have an end cap that was made out of galvanized. Just so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So the biggest advantage of this is it's resistant to rust, right? The galvanized coating protects it from rust, and some minor corrosion from like acids and stuff. There's other steel I would use if you were in an acidic environment. But this is very water resistant. It doesn't need to be painted. It's ready to go. You just form it, install it. It's very universal, very universal. So why don't we always use this? Why do sometimes we go to black? Because in heavier gauge, when you're doing welding, galvanized is not the best welding. You can weld it. The problem is when you burn the zinc coating off, it creates a white powdery dust that is very toxic to breathe. It basically, it's almost like it gives you an asthma attack. If you've ever had that before, your lungs hurt. You'll feel sick for a couple days. If you've ever been to a place that welds galvanized, you'll notice that people like wear these, like, it almost looks like a hazmat suit with a filter. It's so they don't breathe the zinc when they burn it. So it's not weld friendly. It's not weld friendly. It can be welded. It's just it has a certain toxicity to it. Like there's just guys, I know one guy, if it's galvanized, he will not weld it. I don't care how much you try to pay him. You could threaten to fire him. He will not weld it. Okay, so some people just right out refuse to weld galvanized. Okay, I think it is the hardest steel to weld in terms of health. The other steels can provide some difficulty, but generally speaking, it's not like a toxic environment. So again, this is why we have welding hoods. This is why sometimes you'll see like when they weld it, like it looks like a little vacuum cleaner that sucks up all the smoke. It's because it's very toxic. So make sure you have proper ventilation if you are welding galvanized. Okay, so that's galvanized. The next thing is stainless. Okay, we got a chunk of stainless here. You can see it's a lot shinier than galvanized. I'm not a metallurgist, but I believe it's because it has a higher nickel content. That's why it has the shine. So why do we use galvanized? Here's the advantages of galvanized. It is resistant to like acid and rust, right? So it's way more resistant to acids than galvanized is. Way more resistant. It's hygienic. So a lot of pharmaceutical and food production facilities will demand that if it comes in contact with the product, it be made of stainless. So that's the biggest advantage, in my opinion, in the type of work I do. It is heat resistant. Okay, so if sometimes we make duct work for incinerators, and they are stainless because it will take the heat. So let me give you an example. Like 14 gauge for 14 gauge galvanized, I'm sorry, 14 gauge stainless, which I believe this is what that is. For me to get the same heat resistance, I'd have to use like almost 1/4 inch black. Okay, the math isn't quite that equal, but I've had that where they gave me an option: 1/4 inch black for a stack or 14 gauge stainless. I remember. So that's actually, I think it might have been 3/16, but it's you know what I mean, it's way for high temperature stacks, like metal stacks. This is the way to go. Unless you want, because 1/4 inch, it's hard to roll, it's heavy. I mean, it's hard to move. Okay, trust me, I've been on a facility where I had to take one down. It's hard to move. So that's another advantage. One of the other advantages is that it's very aesthetically pleasing. Sometimes people want stuff made out of stainless because they like the way it looks. Okay, so that is that's another advantage. Now, what are the disadvantages of stainless? Why don't we make everything stainless? Okay, very expensive. It is. So let me just give you this: if a sheet of galvanized was $100, the same thickness for stainless would be $300. Okay, it's 3 times the cost usually. Okay, and so it's very expensive. Very expensive. That's the number one reason why a lot of people, sometimes there's stuff that should be stainless and people try to get away from it because it is very expensive. It is, because it's heat resistant, it is, I want to say harder to weld, but you have to use higher temperatures to weld it. And the problem with higher temperatures is sometimes it warps the steel. Okay, so I'm not going to say stainless is hard to weld. That's not quite an accurate statement. It's a little more finessing, okay? Because you don't want it, sometimes when you're taking it, you're trying to make it look really nice, and it can get a little warpage, okay? You don't want that. So that's like I said, I think stainless is easier to weld than galvanized just because of the toxicity element, but sometimes you gotta be careful. The biggest problem I think with working with stainless is it's hard. Okay, so it's hard to drill holes through it. Like you will burn through some bits trying to drill through stainless. It is when you weld it, if you get like a little bit of slag you're trying to clean off with the grinder, way harder to clean it than it is with black. Like black, you take a grinder, the little, it comes right off. The little slag, or not slag, but like sometimes the weld sparks hit the metal and they form. Way harder to get off. It's hard to cut. It's just trying to penetrate it, basically cut it, drill it, something of that it will destroy the bit, okay, or destroy the sawzall blade, or destroy the grind up disc. It is way hard. It's hard, okay. And another thing is that it gets fingerprints on it pretty easily. You can see there's some little marks on it. I don't know if you can see my fingerprint right. I'm going to point at it. fingerprint right there. So sometimes you'll see guys wear gloves because they don't want to get the oil from the hands on it, and that's why sometimes you see people with like a can of like stainless cleaner, right? So stainless. I love working with stainless. But when it comes to drilling and cutting, it's hard. Like my shear will cut a quarter inch black, but I don't know. I would be very afraid to cut quarter inch stainless. 3/16 might be the most I go. I'd kind of be terrified. I won't lie. So anyways, that's stainless. And the last metal that we work with here at the ventilation shop is aluminum. This is the fifth metal people work with. Let me just, before I get to aluminum, that's copper. I have only once in my 20 years doing the type of work I do have worked with copper. If you do like metal roofing, like for churches, a lot of copper. Like if you're trying to make the building look pretty, or copper. I don't do copper, so I have very little experience with copper. There's other guys that could probably help you with that. But here, and the only thing I ever made of copper was a louver, okay? No welding. I don't believe you can weld copper. But like I said, I don't work with copper a lot, so I'm not the guy to ask about copper. But the last metal that we work here a lot with is aluminum. I got a piece of aluminum tread plate. Now, the advantages of aluminum is the following. It's light. It's way lighter. Like, these are both quarter inch, and this little piece weighs about as much as this, okay? This is it's really great if you have to like have something where people have to take off a lot. This is great. This is great. It's resistant to corrosion and rust, right? Sometimes I've used this on like a walking platform where there's a lot of moisture in the air, so this is great for that. It is very aesthetic. It's very a lot of people like the look of aluminum. So here's some problems. Again, it costs a lot of money. It costs way more than the black or the galvanized. I'm not, off the top of my head, I don't know like where it compares to stainless, but it's very expensive. Very expensive, okay? It's difficult to weld. You can weld it, but it's probably, it warps a lot. The welds can crack. If you're welding, it ain't for structure, right? It's for aesthetics, right? So it's very difficult to weld. You have to get a special gas for it. I believe it's got to have, is it helium? What? I think it's helium. You got to have a tank with a little bit of helium and the carbon and the argon. I can't remember it's a tri-mix type of mix. I don't really weld this. When I use this is just for like plating on a wall or like a platform where they got to remove something. That's when I use it, right? The other problem with it is it's very soft. So when you use machinery, like let me take a look. So here's a Pittsburgh machine. A few years ago, I had to make some aluminum ductwork, and it really gunks up the gears, right? It gunks them up. Okay, it is not machine friendly. If you try to use a grinder cutting wheel, it will gunk up the wheel. It's just not. When you bend it, you gotta be careful because you can literally crack and break the metal in half. It's very soft. It's very soft. Like I said, this is probably the least amount I use. I generally just use it when I'm making little platforms and and the walking deck, they gotta be able to remove it. Maybe there's some piping underneath and they want something light. That's generally when I use this, right? That's the aluminum. So, like I said, these are the type of steels: aluminum, stainless, black, galvanized, and again, some shops use copper. I've only ever once made something out of copper, and that was a louver. But some shops do a lot of copper work, so unfortunately, that's not what we do here. But this is just a general introduction video to what sheet metal is and a couple of different types of metal. And there's more metals out there, guys. There's different grades of stainless. This is 304 2B. I can't remember the other stainless we have here. It's for really acidic stuff. Like, let me give you an example where we use the stainless. It was a higher grade of nickel. I can't think of what is it? It's L something. I forget the the code, but we used it because it was for human waste tanks underneath a pier. So you go to the bathroom and the tank took it. So I had to take a lot of acidic. That's what I mean by acidic. So human waste. I've seen places I call it battery acid, but it's like they put pots in acid to clean them. So they have tanks of acid. That's the type of stuff we'd use for stainless too. So anyways, guys, this is just an overview of the different type of metals. And like I said, there's all the types of metal. There's bronze, there's copper, there's aluminized, which looks like galvanized, but instead of zinc, they use an aluminum silicone base. I like that. That's really good for welding. But I don't have a piece right here. So anyways, guys, and there's probably metals I've not, like, you know, there's titanium. There's probably metals that people work with that I'll never touch in my life. But anyways, that's just a basic introduction. So I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, consider giving us a subscribe. Later.